My stepmother and father are going on a honeymoon with their daughters, leaving me alone. So I make sure they don't come back into my house. Okay, so I'm 22 and I own the house I grew up in. It wasn't always mine, though. My mom left it to me when she passed away last year. She had a stroke out of nowhere, and that's still something I'm processing. She was only 47. I mean, it still feels unreal sometimes, you know? One minute she's here and then, boom, she's just gone. But anyway, she left me the house, which is the only good thing that came out of all that, I guess. Growing up, I was close to my mom. My parents split when I was 7, and I did the whole back and forth thing. Half the time with dad, half with mom. But let's be real, I always got along better with her. Dad was just, I don't know. He was always busy. It was either work or some woman he was dating. Honestly, it was like I was never his priority. Not that I'm bitter or anything. Well, maybe a little. But I had mom, so I didn't care that much. When I turned 18 and started college, Dad moved to Chicago for work. So I didn't really see him unless it was Christmas or maybe Thanksgiving if he felt like flying in. It was no big deal to me at the time. I was busy with school anyway. Then, 2 years ago, Dad shows up for Christmas with this woman, Susan. She's 38, so yeah, way younger than him. She's got 2 teenage daughters, Claire and Jessica, who were 16 and 14 at the time. It was a little weird, to be honest. Dad had never brought a girlfriend to any family event before. And suddenly, here's Susan with her kids. I tried to be nice. Like, I wasn't about to make it awkward or anything. Plus, Dad seemed really into her, and her daughters were quiet, keeping to themselves. So, I thought, whatever, right? We had a decent dinner, exchanged presents, all that Christmas stuff. After that, Susan would say hi if I was on the phone with Dad, and she seemed pretty cool. Her daughters, though? Yeah, they stayed quiet, didn't really talk much. I figured they were just shy or something. Then, last year, Mom passed, and I found out she left me the house. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't expecting anything, but I wasn't surprised either. Mom always had things planned, and she knew how much this house meant to me. She even told me around my 18th birthday that she had made sure everything was in order for when she was gone. I thought it was a little morbid at the time, but now I'm glad she did that. So, I moved into the house after graduation. I didn't want to rush into getting an apartment or anything. Plus, this house has always been a place of comfort for me. I thought it'd be nice to live here and figure things out. Dad, though, he was not happy. I didn't know it at first, but he wanted the house back. See, this was the house he bought with my mom when they first got married, and I guess he thought it should have gone to him. He got all moody about it, but he never said it directly. It was more like subtle digs here and there. He didn't have to pay alimony after the divorce, so it's not like he lost out financially or anything, but I could tell it bothered him. After the funeral, Dad and Susan went back to Chicago, and for a while things were quiet. I lived here on my own, settled into a routine, started a new job. You know how it goes. Then, about 6 months ago, Dad calls me and says he's getting married to Susan. They're going to have the wedding in Chicago, but after the wedding, they want to stay here for a bit before they head off on their honeymoon. I didn't think much of it at first. He said it didn't make sense to stay in a hotel when there's this big house with empty rooms, and he promised to cover the bills while they were here, so I figured sure, why not? I let them move in a month before the wedding, and at first, it was kind of nice having people around. The house felt less empty, and Susan was nice enough. Her daughters still didn't talk much, but they weren't causing any problems, so I didn't mind. For the first couple of weeks, everything was chill. We'd eat dinner together, talk about wedding plans, and I was even starting to think, maybe this wouldn't be so bad long term. Then, 3 days before the wedding, Dad sits me down for this serious talk. He asks if I'd be okay with them staying here permanently. Like, he just drops that on me, no warning. He says they've been thinking about it and feel like this house could be a home for all of us. He even says he doesn't like the idea of me living here alone because, apparently, he's worried about me or something. I don't know where that concern was when he was busy with work or off dating random women while I was growing up, but suddenly, now he's concerned. I didn't say yes right away. I mean, it was flattering that he wanted me to feel like part of the family, but there was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. I couldn't shake the thought of how pissed he was when he found out he wasn't getting the house. So, instead of agreeing, I told him I needed to think about it and that I'd give him an answer after the wedding. He seemed a little disappointed, but he didn't push it, which was good because I wasn't ready to make a decision yet. Anyway, the wedding comes and goes, and it was fine. They had a small ceremony, and I was getting ready to tell Dad my decision. I figured I'd say no, but I wanted to wait until they were done celebrating. 2 days after the wedding, I wake up, and the house is dead silent. Everyone's gone. At first, I thought maybe they went out for breakfast or something, but then I noticed most of their stuff was still here. Suitcases, clothes, everything. I start calling Dad. No answer. I try Susan, and she finally picks up, all casual, like nothing's wrong. She tells me they left for their honeymoon that morning and would be gone for a week. Like, what? They didn't even tell me they were leaving. I was living in this house with them, and they just dipped without saying a word. I'm already annoyed, but then Susan starts acting all weird. She's like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll be back soon. But hey, could you make sure the house is clean for when we return?" I almost lost it right there. Here I am, letting them stay in my house, and she's acting like it's her place. I tried to stay calm, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. It wasn't just that they didn't tell me. They were treating me like some kind of maid. So yeah, that's when I knew things were about to change. All right, so after that whole honeymoon stunt, I was done. Like, completely over it. They left without a word, treated me like I was their maid, and then Susan had the nerve to boss me around about cleaning the house. Yeah, no thanks. I had already been on the fence about them staying long term, but now? Not happening. The second she hung up the phone, I knew exactly what I was going to do. First thing I did was pack up their stuff. And when I say pack, I don't mean I folded everything neatly and put it in boxes. Nope. I grabbed all their clothes, shoes, whatever else they had lying around, and just tossed it into these old, beat-up cardboard boxes I found in the garage. I didn't care how wrinkled or messed up their things got. I just wanted it all out of my sight. It felt like I was taking back my space, you know? This is my house, and if they're going to disrespect me like that, they don't deserve to stay here. After I packed their things, I dragged the boxes out to the front yard. I know it sounds petty, but at that point, I didn't care. I was so angry that I wanted them to come home and find their stuff sitting outside like garbage. They needed to understand that they couldn't just treat me like an afterthought in my own home. Once the boxes were out, I wasn't done. I went to the hardware store and bought new locks for the front and back doors. Changing the locks wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, though. I had no clue what I was doing, so I watched a YouTube video on how to change them, and it took me a solid couple of hours to figure it out. But once I got them installed, I felt a weird sense of satisfaction. Like this was me taking control of my own space again. It felt good. A week later, they finally came back from their honeymoon. I knew the moment they'd come home because Dad started blowing up my phone. I was at work, so I didn't answer right away, but I knew exactly what he was calling about. By the time I checked my phone on break, I had about 15 missed calls from him and a few text messages. The texts were short and to the point. Where are our things? Why are the locks changed? Call me now. I ignored them. I wasn't in the mood to deal with their tantrums, especially not while I was trying to focus on work. But I figured it would only get worse if I didn't respond, so when I got home, I called Dad back. I expected him to be angry, but I wasn't ready for just how furious he was. He didn't even give me a chance to say hello before he launched into a full-on rant. He was shouting about how I was disrespectful and ungrateful, and how this wasn't how family treated each other. I let him go on for a bit, just listening. But the whole time I was sitting there thinking, where was all this family talk when you ditched me to go on a honeymoon? Eventually, he paused to take a breath, and I cut in. I told him straight up, "You don't live here. You don't get to make the rules." I reminded him that it's my house now, not his. He went silent for a second, and I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. I think he was shocked that I actually stood up to him. Then he tried to guilt trip me. He said something like, "Your mother would be so disappointed in you for treating me like this. She would want us to live together as a family." That hit a nerve, but I wasn't going to let him manipulate me. I knew exactly what Mom would have wanted, and it wasn't for me to let Dad and his new family waltz in and take over my life. So I told him that. I told him Mom left the house to me for a reason, and if he thought for 1 second that she'd want him and Susan living here after what they'd done, he was delusional. That's when the conversation really took a turn. He started yelling again, calling me selfish and immature. He said I was acting like a spoiled brat and that I needed to grow up. But here's the thing. I was the one who had been responsible this whole time. I'd been living on my own, paying my bills, taking care of the house. Meanwhile, he's out here acting like it's still 1995 and he can just waltz back into my life whenever he feels like it. So I told him, "If you want your stuff, take it from the front yard. If I see you or Susan or anyone else in this house when I get back, I'm calling the cops." That shut him up real quick. He hung up on me after that, and I wasn't sure if he'd actually take the stuff or just leave it there as some sort of passive-aggressive move. But when I got home from work later, the boxes were gone. I felt this huge sense of relief. like I had finally put my foot down and made it clear that I wasn't going to be pushed around. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. The next day, Dad calls me again. This time, he's not yelling, but he's trying to act all calm and rational, like he didn't just flip out on me the day before. He tells me that Susan wants to apologize. Apparently, she didn't mean any of the things she said and was just having a bad day. Yeah, right. I wasn't buying it for a second. I let him talk for a while just to see where this was going, and then he dropped the real reason for the call. They were broke. Turns out Dad had been fired from his job months ago and had been living off his savings. They spent all their money on this extravagant wedding and honeymoon, and now they were pretty much homeless. He actually had the nerve to ask me if they could move back in just for a little while until they got back on their feet. I almost laughed. They expected me to let them back into my house after everything? Not a chance. I told Dad no, flat out. I said they could figure it out on their own, but they weren't coming back here. I reminded him that they treated me like crap, and I wasn't going to let them manipulate me into feeling sorry for them. He tried one last guilt trip, saying, "You're my daughter. I thought you'd be there for me." But I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. I told him I was done and hung up the phone. And that's where things stood. I was free of them, or so I thought. Alright, so after telling my dad they couldn't move back in, I thought that was the end of it. Like, seriously, I figured they'd go find a place, deal with their mess, and leave me alone, but nope, that's not what happened. The next few days were, well, they were a train wreck. It started with a text. Actually, it was like 3 texts, all from my dad, one after the other. Something along the lines of, "Please reconsider. You don't understand the situation, and we really need your help." I didn't answer because at that point, I was just over it. I had said my piece, and I didn't want to deal with their guilt trips anymore. But that's when things started to get weird. One afternoon, I'm at work, and my phone starts blowing up. Not just texts, but phone calls too. And not from Dad this time. Susan was calling. Now, I'm not stupid, I knew what was coming, but I figured I'd let her speak her mind and get it over with. So I picked up. Big mistake. She starts off all sweet, like she didn't call me a selfish brat the last time we talked. She's going on and on about how much they miss me, how they don't want this rift between us, and how the girls, Claire and Jessica, really want to come back and live as a family. I didn't say anything at first, just let her ramble because I knew she wasn't calling just to catch up. She was building up to something, and when she finally got to it, it was worse than I expected. Turns out, they didn't just want to move back in. No, they needed to move back in. Why? Because they had no other options. Dad had lost his job months ago, something he conveniently forgot to mention when they first asked to stay. Not only that, but they had spent all their savings on this ridiculous, over-the-top wedding and the honeymoon. Susan wasn't working because, get this, she quit her job to become a full-time housewife right after the wedding. Now with no income, they couldn't afford their rent back in Chicago, so they were essentially homeless. I was fuming. I mean, who quits their job with no backup plan? And how do you spend all your money on a wedding when you don't even have a job? It made no sense. So I told her flat out, "I'm not your safety net. You can't just show up here and expect me to bail you out." That's when her sweet act dropped. In the blink of an eye, she went from, "Oh, we miss you so much," to, "You're heartless." She actually had the audacity to call me selfish for not letting them move back in. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She said something like, "We're your family, and family is supposed to help each other out in times of need." I cut her off right there. I wasn't about to sit through another guilt trip. I told her that I had already helped them by letting them stay before the wedding, and that's where my obligation ended. Then she hit me with, "If your mother were here, she'd be so disappointed in you." That was the last straw. I told her I wasn't going to let her use my mom's memory against me like that and hung up. She tried calling back a few more times, but I ignored it. At that point, I wasn't sure what their next move would be, but I knew they weren't giving up without a fight. The next day, Dad showed up at my house. No warning, no text. He just knocked on the door like everything was fine. I wasn't home when he first came by, but one of my neighbors texted me to say they saw him hanging around outside. Great. So I got home after work, half expecting him to still be there, but he wasn't. I thought maybe he'd finally taken the hint, but then I saw the note he left on my front door. The note was just as you'd expect. More guilt trips, more pleas for help. But there was one part that stood out. He mentioned that if I didn't let them move back in, they were going to lose everything. He wasn't just talking about money. He was talking about their entire life in Chicago. They had been evicted from their apartment, and their only option was to move back to their hometown, which apparently was the last thing they wanted to do. I'll admit, part of me felt bad. Like, I didn't want them to lose everything. But at the same time, I knew this wasn't my fault. They put themselves in this situation. Dad losing his job wasn't on me. Susan quitting hers definitely wasn't on me. And spending all their money on a wedding? Yeah, that was their bad decision, not mine. I wasn't about to let them make it my responsibility. That night, Dad called again, and this time I picked up. I figured we needed to have one final conversation, lay everything out on the table, and then hopefully, that would be the end of it. The call started off with Dad trying to be calm and reasonable. He explained everything, how he had been laid off months before the wedding but didn't want to worry me with the details. He said he thought he'd get another job quickly, but with the economy being what it was, that didn't happen. Susan quitting her job was a mutual decision because they thought it'd be better for the family. And the money? Well, they thought they'd have enough saved up to cover everything. I let him talk, but when he finished, I didn't hold back. I told him I didn't appreciate being lied to, and I wasn't going to let them manipulate me into feeling sorry for them. I said it plain and simple. You're adults. You made these choices. Now you have to deal with the consequences. He tried one last time to guilt trip me, saying things like, "We're your family, and I just want to live somewhere that reminds me of your mother." But I wasn't falling for it. I told him I was done, I wasn't letting them back in, and that was final. Dad got quiet after that. I thought maybe he'd hang up, but instead he started crying, like actual sobbing. He told me that I was breaking his heart, that he couldn't believe I was turning my back on him in his time of need. I'll be honest, it was tough hearing him like that. Part of me wanted to cave, to tell him they could stay just so the guilt would go away. But I knew that if I gave in now, it would never end. They'd keep taking, and I'd never have any peace in my own home. So I told him, "I'm sorry, but I can't help you." He didn't say anything after that, just hung up. So, after that last call where Dad broke down crying, I figured that was it. He hung up, I stuck to my guns, and they'd finally leave me alone, right? Nope, I should have known better. If anything, things were just getting started. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet, honestly. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know? And of course it did. It started with a text from Susan. Now, keep in mind, I had already blocked her number, but apparently she found another way to reach me. She used Claire's phone to text me, trying to act all casual, like nothing had happened. "Hey, just wanted to let you know we're heading back to Chicago. Hope you're doing well." It was bizarre, like she was pretending the last few weeks of drama didn't exist. I didn't respond, because at this point, I wasn't going to engage. But something about the way she worded it didn't sit right with me. Heading back to Chicago? How? They didn't have a place to live or any money. Later that day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I figured it was some random telemarketer, but nope, it was Dad. I didn't know it was him until I picked up and heard his voice. He wasn't yelling this time. Actually, he sounded weirdly calm, which instantly made me suspicious. He said, "I need to talk to you. Can we meet in person?" I wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea of seeing him face to face after everything that had gone down, but at the same time, I wanted to get it over with. So I agreed. We set up a time to meet at a coffee shop near my place. When I got there, he was already sitting at a table, looking tired as hell. I mean, bags under his eyes, hair all messed up. He didn't look good. I sat down, and we had this super awkward silence for a minute. Then he starts telling me how they've been trying to figure things out since I told them they couldn't move back in. He mentioned staying with a friend for a couple of days, but apparently, that didn't work out. That's when he drops the real news. They're not going back to Chicago. Now, remember Susan's text about heading back? Yeah, that was a lie. Turns out they're moving in with someone else. And this is where things took a turn I didn't see coming. Susan's ex-boyfriend, Kyle, had offered to take them in. Let me tell you, my jaw practically hit the floor. Kyle, as in the guy she dated before Dad, the one she supposedly had this messy breakup with? I couldn't believe it. Dad tried to explain it like it was no big deal. He said Kyle had seen their situation and felt bad, so he offered to let them stay with him and help them get back on their feet. But come on, who does that? It was obvious there was more going on here. I asked Dad straight up, "Are you seriously okay with this? Like, how could he be fine with his new wife moving back in with her ex?" He shrugged and said they didn't have many options. They were desperate, and Kyle was the only one willing to help. He even tried to convince me it was just temporary, but I wasn't buying it. As if things weren't awkward enough, Dad then casually mentioned that Kyle had been spending a lot of time with Claire and Jessica. He said it like it was no big deal, but I could tell there was more to the story. Apparently, Kyle had missed out on a lot of their lives when they were younger. Like, He wasn't around much when they were growing up. So now, he was trying to make up for lost time or whatever. And that's when it hit me. This whole thing was a mess, and Dad was just too blind to see it. I tried to reason with him. I told him that moving in with Kyle wasn't going to end well. I mean, it was a disaster waiting to happen. But he wouldn't listen. He just kept saying, it's only temporary, and we'll figure it out. At this point, I was losing my patience. I didn't want to be part of their drama anymore. I was ready to leave when Dad suddenly said something that made me freeze. He told me that if things didn't work out with Kyle, they were still hoping I'd reconsider letting them move back in with me. Are you kidding me? After everything that had happened, he was still trying to guilt-trip me into taking them in? I couldn't believe it. I stood up right there and told him I wasn't changing my mind. I said, "You've made your choice, and now you have to live with it." As I was about to walk out, Dad grabbed my arm, not in a forceful way, but just enough to make me stop. He looked at me with this sad, desperate expression and said, "I don't want to lose you too." That hit me harder than I expected. Part of me felt bad for him, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't let him drag me into their mess again. I pulled my arm away and told him, "You've already lost me." And with that, I left. The next few days were a blur. I kept replaying that conversation in my head, trying to make sense of it. Part of me felt like I'd been too harsh, but the other part knew I was doing the right thing. Then, about a week later, I got another call, this time from Claire. I hadn't heard from her in ages, so I was curious why she was calling. She sounded nervous, almost like she didn't want to be on the phone. She told me that Kyle had been acting weird around her and Jessica since they moved in. Now, I'm not going to get into too many details, but let's just say the vibe was off. Claire didn't say much, but I could tell she was uncomfortable. She asked if there was any way they could come stay with me for a little while, just until things settled down. That threw me for a loop. Here I was thinking I was done with their drama, and now Claire was reaching out to me for help. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to help her, but another part of me didn't want to get dragged back into their mess. So I told her I'd think about it and get back to her. But deep down, I knew I couldn't just leave her and Jessica in a bad situation. I started to wonder if maybe this whole thing was bigger than I realized. So after that call from Claire, I was torn. Part of me didn't want to deal with their drama anymore. I had finally gotten rid of Dad, Susan, and all the craziness that came with them. But hearing the fear in Claire's voice made me feel like maybe I couldn't just ignore what was happening. I mean, she's a kid. Well, not exactly, she's 17 now, but still. She sounded scared, and I couldn't just brush that off. I told myself I'd sleep on it and figure things out in the morning, but let's be real. I barely got any sleep that night. My mind was racing, thinking about what Claire said, wondering what was going on in that house. The fact that she called me of all people meant it had to be serious. I tossed and turned, trying to convince myself that this wasn't my problem. But, deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore it. The next morning, I called Claire back. She picked up almost immediately, like she'd been waiting for my call. I didn't waste any time. I asked her straight up, "What's going on with Kyle? Why are you and Jessica so uncomfortable?" She hesitated, which didn't exactly make me feel better. Finally, she said, "It's just, he's been acting weird, like he's always around, always watching us." That sent a chill down my spine. I asked her if he'd done anything specific, but she said no, not really. It was more of a feeling. You know that gut feeling you get when something's off? She said he kept trying to get closer to them, like constantly offering to take them places or insisting they hang out with him. She didn't like it, and Jessica didn't either. But every time they mentioned it to Susan, she just brushed it off like it was no big deal. At this point, I was starting to panic a little. I mean, I don't know Kyle that well, but something about this situation screamed red flag. I didn't want to freak Claire out even more, but I knew I had to do something. So I asked her if she and Jessica wanted to stay with me for a few days, just to get away and clear their heads. She jumped at the chance. It was like she'd been waiting for someone to give her an escape. The next problem was figuring out how to get them out of there without causing a scene. I didn't want to deal with Kyle or Susan, especially not Kyle. I had no idea how he'd react if he found out the girls were leaving. And honestly, I didn't want to find out. Claire said Kyle worked late most nights so they could sneak out after he left. They'd pack up some stuff and call me when they were ready. So that night, I waited. It felt like I was sitting on pins and needles, just waiting for something to go wrong. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Finally, around 10 p.m., Claire texted me. "We're ready. Can you come get us?" I grabbed my keys and headed over. When I pulled up to the house, I kept the car running. I didn't want to risk anything. Claire and Jessica came out quietly, both carrying duffel bags. They looked tense, like they were expecting Kyle to come storming out after them at any moment. But he didn't. They got in the car, and we took off. The ride back to my place was pretty quiet. I could tell they were both shaken up, especially Claire. I didn't push them to talk. I figured they needed some time to process everything. When we got back to my house, I set them up in the guest room and told them to make themselves comfortable. They didn't say much, just mumbled thanks and went to bed. The next morning, things were still pretty tense. Claire was on edge, constantly checking her phone. I asked her if she had heard from Susan, and she shook her head. "She's probably too busy with Kyle to even notice we're gone," she said bitterly. That hit me hard. Claire was obviously feeling abandoned by her mom, and I couldn't blame her. Later that day, I finally got a call. From Dad. Not Susan, not Kyle, but Dad. I should have seen it coming, but I wasn't exactly prepared for what he had to say. He knew the girls were with me, and he wasn't happy about it. He tried to stay calm, but I could hear the frustration in his voice. He started off by saying, "You should have told me before you took them, like I had kidnapped them or something." I cut him off. "They called me, Dad. They wanted to leave. Something's not right over there, and you know it." That's when the conversation got ugly. He started defending Kyle, saying he was just trying to be a good stepdad, and that Claire and Jessica were being dramatic. He claimed I was stirring the pot and making things worse by letting them stay with me. He even accused me of trying to drive a wedge between him and Susan. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him flat out, "This has nothing to do with you and Susan. I'm just trying to help Claire and Jessica. If you actually listened to them instead of brushing off their concerns, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation." He didn't like that. He started ranting about how I was overreacting, that Kyle was a good guy, and that I needed to stop causing problems. But I wasn't backing down. I told him I wasn't going to send Claire and Jessica back to a place where they didn't feel safe. And if he had a problem with that, then too bad. That's when he pulled out the big guns. He said, "If you don't send them back, I'll take legal action." I couldn't believe it. My own dad was threatening me with legal action over this? I didn't even know what to say. I just stood there holding the phone, trying to process the fact that this was really happening. After a long silence, I finally said, "Do whatever you need to do, but I'm not sending them back." He hung up after that, and I stood there staring at my phone, wondering how things had gotten so messed up. I mean, this was my dad, and now we were on opposite sides of a battle I didn't even want to be in. Claire and Jessica stayed with me for a while after that. I didn't hear from Susan or Kyle directly, but I knew they were out there trying to figure out their next move. As for Dad, I haven't spoken to him since that call. Maybe he'll follow through with his threat, or maybe he'll realize I was just trying to protect his stepdaughters. I don't know. But one thing's for sure, I'm not backing down. For context, I've been living with my dad and stepmom since they got married about a year ago. Right from the start, my stepmom made it clear she wasn't thrilled about me staying there. Despite her coldness, I chose to stay because the alternative, living with my mom and her difficult husband, wasn't viable for me. My stepmom's attitude has been tough on me. She's imposed rules that make me feel more like a tenant than a family member, especially about food. She declared that I wasn't allowed to eat anything she cooked or bought, so I had to start buying and cooking my own meals, which my dad pays for, though she disapproves. Now here's where things got even messier. A few days ago, an emergency struck that really put our strained household dynamics to the test. My stepmom's sister had a severe accident and needed emergency surgery. It was a scary time, and while the surgery eventually went well, the chaos it caused at home brought some underlying tensions to the surface. On the day of the accident, my stepmom texted me in the afternoon. She informed me that she'd be bringing her sister's children to our house later that night because of the emergency, and she asked me to get groceries and prepare a late dinner for them. Considering how she had been treating me, her request felt abrupt and unreasonable. Upset and feeling taken for granted, I chose not to respond to her text or fulfill her request. When my stepmom arrived around midnight with her niece and nephew, she was shocked to find that not only had I not prepared any food, but I hadn't even picked up any groceries. The kids were tired and hungry, and the situation quickly escalated. My stepmom was furious, confronting me about my lack of action. I calmly explained that since she had made it clear I was not her responsibility, I didn't see why her family's emergency should become my responsibility. I reminded her of her own rules, that I was to fend for myself, so I applied the same logic to her request. She lashed out, calling me selfish and a jerk. I retorted that she was seeing a reflection of her own treatment toward me. Things got heated, and she ended up having to order pizza to feed everyone. The argument didn't go unnoticed. My dad overheard and intervened, but not in the way I hoped. My dad was deeply upset with me. He believed I should have helped out as part of the family, especially given the emergency situation. He said that refusing to help showed a lack of compassion and maturity. He argued that this could have been an opportunity to mend fences and improve our relationship. Frustrated and feeling misunderstood, I countered that our relationship had deteriorated beyond simple fixes, especially due to the constant exclusion and disrespect I felt from my stepmom. The fallout was significant. My dad decided to ground me, stating that I needed to reflect on my actions and the impact they had on others, particularly in times of crisis. He expressed disappointment in how I handled the situation, emphasizing that families should support each other, no matter the circumstances. Later, my mom heard about the incident through family friends who had picked up on the drama. She was torn. While she understood my feelings of alienation and frustration, she also wished I had risen above the situation and helped my stepmom out of compassion for the kids involved, if nothing else. This led to a long, emotional conversation with her about my living arrangements and whether it was time to reconsider my decision to stay with my dad. As it stands, the household remains tense, and I'm left feeling isolated and conflicted. On one hand, I stand by my decision to set boundaries based on how I've been treated. On the other, I wonder if there was a better way to handle the crisis that could have avoided further conflict. The incident has forced me to reevaluate my relationships and consider the future of my living situation as I strive to find a balance between standing up for myself and maintaining family harmony. So am I the idiot here? Now for the top comments before the update. Not very. You are not entitled. She set a precedent in the home and she got angry when it came back to bite her. Your father is a real piece of work too. I cannot imagine marrying someone who would mistreat my child. I recommend you get away from all of them as soon as possible. Yes, it's what she wants, but is it worth staying in such a hostile environment? Seriously, I was going to say this as well. But if I was with someone who treated my son like this, they would be out on that bar in no time. Also, if guests were arriving until midnight, the stepmother should have asked her husband to grocery shop and make food. Why ask Opie after mistreating them? Because she's trying to manufacture drama to drive Opie out. What a nasty piece of work. When people say you should aim for fairy tale endings, they don't mean becoming the evil step-parent. Do you have grandparents or a decent aunt who could live with your dad? Realizes he will not be around to help him or stepmother when they're older. You're not allowed to eat at family dinners. Wow. How did your dad saw you when he has no damn balls? Your mother is no prize, letting a new husband scare her child away. I'd say that all adults failed you. More kids. How awful. I think you need to sit down and ask your dad why he has higher standards for you, a teenager, than he does for his wife, a full-grown adult. I'm a stepmom, and I most certainly think it's my problem if my stepchild is hungry. I also don't understand why he'd marry someone who is combative and not loving toward you. You are part of him, and she supposedly loves him. So won't gives. I'm going to be real with you. I'm a mandated reporter. If I knew more about you, won't report her and your father to CPS. It's his job. At the very least, to ensure you're eating and being provided food for them. Letting her do this to you is all kinds of wrong. I'm sorry. Both of your homes suck. Update 1. So that night when everything blew up was insane. My stepmom comes home expecting a full meal ready for her sister's kids, and there I am, just chilling. She loses it because I didn't jump up to play chef after how she's been treating me. I mean, come on, she's been cold as ice, and suddenly I'm supposed to act like family? Nah, that wasn't happening. After our blow-up, things got super awkward. My dad's totally on her side, saying I should have helped out because that's what family does. He doesn't get that it's not about the one night. It's about all those days she made me feel like an outsider in my own home. So now, he's grounded me. Like I'm some kid who missed curfew. Not a guy trying to stand up for himself. Talking to my mom's a whole other story. She's got her opinions for sure. She's kind of split because she sees where I'm coming from, but also pulls the be the bigger person card. I get where she's coming from, but it's tough, you know? She thinks maybe it's time to think about moving out, but that's easier said than done. This whole thing has me thinking a lot about what family really means. My buddies have been more supportive than my own dad lately. They keep telling me maybe it's time to just bail, find a new spot, start fresh. And maybe they're right. Because this drama is just draining, man. So what now? Well, I'm seriously thinking about moving out. Maybe get a small place, something affordable. I've been looking at job ads, trying to stack up some cash, maybe get some more hours at work. I've also thought about seeing a counselor because this whole saga's got my head spinning, man. I gotta figure out how to handle things without losing my mind or making things worse at home. It's like playing chess on a board where everyone else is playing checkers. They don't see the moves I'm making and probably don't care. So that's the latest. It's a lot, but I'm handling it day by day. Thanks for listening, man. It helps to talk it out. Here's hoping for some peace soon. or at least a good plan to get out of this mess. Catch you later, and thanks for the support. Update 2. So, out of nowhere, my dad and stepmom dropped a bomb on me. They've asked me to pack up and leave. Yeah, you heard that right. After all the tension and arguments, they decided that the best solution was just to kick me out. They gave me this whole spiel about needing peace in the house, and how my presence was just making everything more complicated. I literally have nowhere to go and zero money to make moves. My job doesn't pay enough for me to just grab an apartment, especially not around here where rent is sky high. Plus, all this happened so fast, I barely had time to think about saving up for a rainy day like this. So here I am, suddenly on the brink of being homeless, trying to make sense of a life that feels like it's spiraling out of control. I'm hitting up every friend I can think of, even those I haven't spoken to in ages, just trying to find a couch to crash on for a few nights. Everyone's got their own dramas though, so it's tough. I get it, but man, it's stressful. Work's another story. I've been picking up extra shifts, staying late, doing whatever it takes to scrape together some cash. The boss noticed, thankfully, and it's led to some more permanent extra hours. That helps, sure, but it's a drop in the ocean compared to what I need to get my own place. I've started looking into other part-time gigs too. Anything that pays and fits into the crazy schedule I'm already working. Every day's a grind. I'm either at work, looking for work, or worrying about where I'm going to sleep that night. It's exhausting, but I'm hanging in there. Some days are better than others. On good days, I feel like I can handle this, like I'm going to come out stronger. On bad days, it's all I can do not to just give up. Mentally, it's a marathon. I'm running on fumes, powered by caffeine and sheer stubbornness. I've been using local libraries a lot, not just for the free Wi-Fi to look for roommates or housing, but also to just have a quiet place to think. Libraries are underrated, man. They've become my temporary sanctuary. About that roommate lead, still waiting on that. My buddy's cousin is supposed to get back to me, but things move slowly, and I'm learning that patience isn't just a virtue, it's a necessity. I'm checking out other listings too, hitting up Facebook groups, Craigslist, you name it. Anything to find a stable place. Family-wise, it's like a nuclear winter. My dad's been calling, trying to patch things up, but it's hard to hear him talk about family and support when I'm in this situation because of them. It feels like too little, too late. I've been mostly screening his calls. Maybe that's petty, but I need space to figure out my own life before I can think about mending fences. I had this long convo with my mom the other night. She's worried, obviously. We talked about everything, my living situation, the job hunt, my mental state. She's pushing me to keep my head up, reminding me that I've gotten through tough times before. It helps, hearing that from her, even if her situation isn't exactly one I can fall back on. Looking at the bigger picture, this whole ordeal has really forced me to grow up fast. I'm making decisions I never thought I'd have to make, like budgeting every penny and figuring out the cheapest meals that'll keep me going. It's a crash course in adulting, and I'm learning on the fly. So what's next? Keep pushing, keep working, keep looking for that break that'll get me out of this. I'm not down for the count, not by a long shot. I've got plans, dreams, stuff I still want to do. This is just a rough patch, a really rough patch, but I'll get through it. Seriously, to everyone who's been reaching out, offering advice, or just sending good vibes, thank you. It means the world right now. Stay tuned, because I'm determined to turn this story around. Here's to better days ahead, hopefully filled with good news and a new place to call home. Story 2. From the start, my girlfriend and I were pretty overwhelmed when we found out she was pregnant. We were both scared, but eventually committed to raising our baby together. Her family was opposed to our decision, mainly because they didn't like me much and thought a baby would ruin her future. My brother, the only close family I had, made it clear he wouldn't support me, saying I was on my own once I became an adult. Despite these challenges, my girlfriend and I decided to move in together, hoping to create a peaceful environment away from the negativity of her family. We wanted to prepare for our new arrival in our own space, on our own terms. However, things didn't quite go as planned. As my girlfriend's due date approached, her family did a complete 180. They went from being cold and distant to overly involved, especially her mom. She even insisted on moving in with us for a while after the baby was born to help us out because we were new parents. I agreed, thinking it would be beneficial, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The first few weeks with her mom in our house were incredibly stressful. She criticized everything I did, from how I held the baby to my attempts at changing diapers. She'd snatch the baby from my arms with barely a reason, saying things like she needed to be fed or changed, even if I was just trying to comfort her. If I protested or tried to be involved, she'd dismiss me, claiming I didn't know how to take care of my own child. One day, the situation escalated dramatically. My girlfriend's mom had been particularly overbearing, hovering anytime I tried to interact with my daughter. That evening, after a rough day at work, All I wanted was to hold my baby and find some peace. I walked into the living room to find her mom holding her, and when I reached out to take her, she pulled away, saying the baby had just fallen asleep and needed to be put down in the crib. Frustrated and at my wits' end, I snapped. I demanded that she hand over my daughter, and when she refused, I insisted she leave our home. The argument that ensued was explosive. My girlfriend jumped in, defending her mother's actions and criticizing me for not appreciating the help. The fight got so intense that I ended up telling her mom she had to leave immediately. I couldn't handle her constant interference anymore. But just as I thought things couldn't get worse, my girlfriend's aunt, who had heard about the argument, showed up unannounced to mediate. Instead of calming things down, she sided with her sister, accusing me of being ungrateful and disrespectful. The confrontation grew and neighbors started peering out their doors, drawn by the shouting. In the heat of the moment, my girlfriend's mom threatened to take legal action against me for trying to push her out of her daughter's life. She claimed she had rights as a grandmother and accused me of alienating her from her grandchild. The threat of legal action was shocking and made me realize just how complex and serious the situation had become. I felt isolated and betrayed. My girlfriend seemed torn but leaned towards supporting her mother. My attempt to establish boundaries had backfired, putting me on the defensive. The argument ended with her mom staying, and me, feeling like a stranger in my own home, retreating to a friend's house for the night to cool off. The next day, I returned home to find that my girlfriend had agreed to set some ground rules with her mom, but the damage to our relationship was deep. Discussions about family roles, respect, and boundaries filled the following days. I felt a constant tension, walking on eggshells in my interactions. Now, I'm grappling with how to be a father and partner in an environment that often feels hostile. The joy of new fatherhood has been overshadowed by these conflicts, and I'm left wondering if we can find a way to heal and come together not just for our daughter's sake, but for the sake of our little family's future. Am I the idiot? Story 3. So my husband and I, both 45, have 4 kids. Our youngest daughter, who's a young teen, has a tight-knit group of about 7 or 8 friends. They often have sleepovers together. Recently, my daughter was invited to her friend's house for a sleepover. This friend has a twin brother who's really into sports and gaming. After their house underwent some renovations 2 years ago, he moved to the basement, turning it into his personal boy cave, complete with sports memorabilia, gaming consoles, and a newly renovated vintage-style kitchen. The night of the sleepover, the brother was away at a friend's birthday party out of town, so the girls had the basement to themselves. The girls, including my daughter and one other girl, decided to hang out downstairs. Everything seemed fine until the brother came home the next night to find his TV and stove broken. Understandably upset, his mom called me to come over so the girls could explain what happened. At first, the girls claimed it was all an accident. They said a Wii remote had accidentally flown into the TV, and they didn't know how the stove got damaged. But their story didn't quite add up, and when we threatened to take away their phones unless they told the truth, they finally came clean. It turned out the damage was intentional. The girls were mad at the boy because he had refused to tutor his sister during the school year, telling her to study on her own instead. She ended up failing and had to attend summer school, missing out on fun activities with the group. As a form of revenge, they decided to break his stuff. This was shocking enough, but then things took an even darker turn. As we dug deeper, we found out the girls had also been bullying the boy online. They had created a group chat where they made fun of him for shopping at thrift stores and wearing vintage sports jerseys. They mocked his water jug and other secondhand items, which they posted about on social media to embarrass him further. They even shared some mean-spirited memes about him. My daughter had participated in these mean posts, which I discovered through a screenshot my son sent me during our discussions. We were all horrified by the extent of their actions. We decided that simply making them pay for the damages wasn't enough. They needed to understand the impact of their behavior and learn about empathy and respect. Here's what we did. First, we made the girls split the cost of replacing the TV and repairing the stove. They would earn the money through chores at our house, the boys' house, and other neighbors who needed help with yard work, cleaning, or other tasks. This would teach them the value of hard work and the cost of their actions. Second, we took the boy and his friends thrift shopping to show the girls that thrift stores have value and can be cool. This wasn't just about the boy buying stuff. It was about showing the girls that what they mocked can be appreciated and valuable. Third, the girls had to spend time volunteering at the thrift store, explaining to the workers why they were there. They had to share their story and understand the importance of places that help people and the community. This was a humbling experience meant to teach them empathy. Fourth, we arranged a series of sessions with a counselor for the girls to discuss bullying and its effects. They needed to understand the emotional impact their actions had on the boy and how bullying can deeply hurt others. These sessions included role-playing and activities to help them see things from the perspective of the person being bullied. Lastly, we organized a meeting between the girls and the boy, mediated by the counselor. They had to apologize face-to-face and listen to how their actions affected him. It was a tough but necessary step towards making amends and learning about the power of sincere apologies and forgiveness. After we implemented these measures, my daughter, overwhelmed by the workload and consequences, called my parents to complain. She told them how long it would take to work off the costs and how unfair it felt. My parents, concerned, called me and argued that making the girls do all this was too harsh. They suggested I should cover the costs because the girls were just kids and didn't fully understand the consequences of their actions. I stood firm, explaining that this wasn't just about money, but about teaching important life lessons. My parents weren't happy and continued to push back, but I felt strongly that the girls needed to learn about responsibility, empathy, and the impact of their actions. As the weeks went on, the girls began to understand the weight of their actions. Volunteering at the thrift store and doing chores to pay off the damages was hard work, but it also gave them time to reflect. The counseling sessions helped them grasp the emotional toll of bullying, and their meeting with the boy was a turning point. They saw firsthand the pain they caused and the importance of making things right. Am I the idiot? Story 4. I'm a teenage guy with pretty severe autism, especially when it comes to sensory needs. Because of this, there are a lot of clothes that I just can't wear because they feel too uncomfortable. Suits are a big no-go for me, and loud music is really tough to handle. That's why I bought noise-canceling headphones to help me out in those situations. My older brother, who's 28, got married last weekend. The dress code for the wedding was black suits with red ties for the men. Knowing my issues, my brother told me it was okay if I didn't wear a suit and to bring my headphones if I needed them. He just asked me to look formal and stay out of the professional photos. Sounded like a reasonable plan to me. On the day of the wedding, I showed up wearing a white polo shirt and jeans. I knew it wasn't super formal, but I thought it was the best I could do. Almost immediately, I felt the tension. My sister-in-law, who's 31, and her family started whispering and giving me looks. Eventually, they came up to me, saying what I was wearing was completely inappropriate and that I was embarrassing her side of the family. They made me feel really small, especially since my sister-in-law knows about my autism and sensory issues. She also mentioned that I should have asked her about my outfit first. This made me feel even worse because I assumed my brother had already talked to her about it. Feeling out of place and uncomfortable, I tried to avoid drawing any more attention to myself. As the evening went on, things got worse. My sister-in-law, who had been drinking, suddenly started shouting at me to take off my headphones because she found it disrespectful that I was wearing them while everyone else was dancing to the music. I was overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. Instead of trying to explain myself and causing a scene, I decided to wait outside until the party was over. The next day, I overheard a heated argument between my brother and his new wife about the incident. My brother was defending me, saying he had told me it was okay. But my sister-in-law felt humiliated by my appearance and behavior at their wedding. Hearing them fight because of me made me feel incredibly guilty. I started questioning if I should have just tried harder to wear a suit and handle the loud music without my headphones. But that wasn't the end of it. A few days later, my sister-in-law's family began spreading rumors about me within our social circles, painting me as a troublemaker who intentionally tried to ruin the wedding. They exaggerated the story, saying I refused to follow any rules and was disrespectful on purpose. This made things awkward for my parents and me because people started treating us differently. Then my sister-in-law took things a step further. She posted a rant on social media about certain guests who didn't respect her wedding. She didn't mention me by name, but it was clear who she was talking about. The post went viral among our friends and family, leading to even more gossip and judgment. Some people commented, supporting her view and saying things like, "Weddings are special, everyone should follow the dress code, and it's about respect." Feeling even more isolated, I decided to write a heartfelt letter to my sister-in-law, explaining my autism and sensory needs in detail, hoping she would understand. I poured my feelings into the letter, describing how difficult it is for me to wear certain clothes and handle loud noises. I also apologized for any distress I caused at the wedding and assured her that I never intended to ruin her special day. A few days later, I received a reply from her. She thanked me for the letter and said she understood my situation a bit better now, but she still felt hurt by what happened. She asked for some time to process everything and hoped we could move past this eventually. Meanwhile, my brother suggested we all meet with a family counselor to help resolve the tension. The idea was to have a neutral party mediate the discussion and help us communicate more effectively. My parents, my brother, his wife, and I agreed to give it a try. During the counseling sessions, a lot of emotions came out. My sister-in-law expressed how important her wedding day was to her and how she felt overshadowed by the drama. I shared my struggles with autism and how hard it is for me to navigate social situations. My brother and parents supported both of us, trying to bridge the gap. Through these sessions, we began to understand each other's perspectives better. My sister-in-law started to see that my actions weren't out of disrespect, but out of necessity due to my condition. I realized that weddings are incredibly stressful for everyone involved, and that my presence, while unintended, added to that stress. The counselor suggested we come up with strategies for future family events to prevent similar issues. We agreed on clear communication beforehand and setting realistic expectations. For example, if there's a strict dress code, we'll discuss alternatives that work for everyone, and if there's loud music, we'll find quieter spaces where I can retreat if needed. After a few months of working through these issues, things began to improve. My sister-in-law and I slowly rebuilt our relationship, and my brother was relieved to see us getting along better. While it was a rocky road, the experience taught us all a lot about patience, understanding, and the importance of clear communication. Am I the idiot for not wearing the suit and bringing my noise counselors? Especially if it's caused this much of a rift the day after they got married. Story 5. I'm 37 years old, and my wife Lacey is 32. We've been trying to have a baby for quite a while. Lacey had a really hard time getting pregnant, and it was tough on both of us. But she was determined to keep trying, and finally we got the good news. Lacey is pregnant. We're over the moon about having a baby on the way. Now let's talk about my sister's wedding, which happened last Sunday. The night before the wedding, Lacey started feeling really uncomfortable. We thought it was just normal pregnancy pain, so I told her she could skip the wedding shower and rest at home while I went alone. Around 5 in the morning, Lacey woke me up screaming in pain. I freaked out, grabbed my stuff, helped her into the car, and sped to the hospital. On the way, I tried calling my parents and my sister, but it was really early, so no one answered. I left them a voicemail and sent a text, explaining that Lacey had a serious problem and I might not make it to the wedding. A couple of hours later, I sent another message to let them know I was staying with Lacey at the hospital because she was going through tests and I didn't want her to be alone. I thought they'd understand, but boy, was I wrong. Since then, my phone has been blowing up with angry messages. People in my family are calling me names, saying I'm an idiot, and some even cut me off completely. It's been really rough, but I stand by my decision. I believe Lacey's comfort and health are the most important things, even if it makes me look like the bad guy. So here's more of what happened. At the hospital, they ran a bunch of tests on Lacey. We were both really scared because we didn't know what was going on. It felt like forever, but eventually the doctors came back and said that Lacey was having some complications with the pregnancy. They assured us that the baby was okay, but she needed to stay in the hospital for a few days for monitoring and treatment. This news was a huge relief, but also really stressful. I stayed by Lacey's side the whole time, holding her hand and trying to keep her spirits up. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing with more angry messages from my family. It was hard to focus on anything other than Lacey and the baby, but the constant barrage of negativity made everything more stressful. One message stood out. It was from my mom. She said she understood why I needed to be with Lacey, but still wished I could have been at the wedding. She said that my sister was heartbroken, and that it would have meant a lot to her if I had been there. This tore me apart because I love my sister, but I couldn't leave Lacey when she needed me the most. As the day went on, my sister-in-law sent me a long, furious message. She accused me of ruining her big day and said that everyone was talking about how I didn't show up. She said it was selfish of me to prioritize Lacey over family traditions and that I had embarrassed the whole family. This made me feel even worse. To add to the stress, one of Lacey's nurses accidentally let slip that there might be a problem with our baby's heart. This wasn't confirmed, but it sent us into a spiral of anxiety. We were already on edge, and this news made everything feel even more uncertain. The doctors ran more tests, and the wait for the results felt endless. During this time, my brother showed up at the hospital. He had left the wedding early to come and see us. He told me that there had been a huge fight at the reception. Apparently, my sister had found out why I wasn't there and got into a heated argument with our parents. She felt betrayed and abandoned, and this led to a shouting match that left everyone upset. My brother said he understood why I had to be there with Lacey, but he also told me how hurt our sister was. Later that night, Lacey's condition stabilized a bit, and we finally got some good news. The tests showed that the baby's heart was fine, and the complications were something the doctors could manage with proper care. This was a huge relief for both of us, but we were exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. As we tried to get some rest, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from my dad. He was furious, saying that my absence had cast a shadow over my sister's wedding day. He said that family should come first and that I had let everyone down. He accused me of being dramatic and said that I should have left Lacey in the hospital and gone to the wedding. His harsh words stung, and I felt torn between my commitment to my wife and the expectations of my family. A few days later, we finally got to go home from the hospital. Lacey needed to rest, and I took some time off work to take care of her. But the fallout from the wedding continued to affect us. My sister still wasn't speaking to me, and my parents were distant. They seemed to blame me for the wedding drama, and it hurt to feel so isolated from my family. In the midst of all this, my neighbor dropped by with some surprising news. She said she had seen a post on social media where my sister had vented about the wedding day fiasco. It had gone viral within our community, with people taking sides and adding their own opinions. Some were supportive of me, saying that family emergencies take precedence, while others criticized me for not attending the wedding. This social media storm added another layer of stress. Lacey and I started receiving messages from people we barely knew, offering their unsolicited opinions on our situation. Some were kind and supportive, but others were downright nasty. It felt like our personal life had been turned into a public spectacle. To try and make amends, I decided to write a heartfelt letter to my sister. I explained everything that had happened, from Lacey's health scare to the emotional toll it had taken on both of us. I apologized for missing her big day and expressed how much I wished things could have been different. I hoped that by being honest and open, I could start to rebuild our relationship. A few days later, I received a response from my sister. She said she was still hurt and disappointed, but she appreciated the letter. She needed more time to process everything, but she hoped we could eventually move past it. This gave me a glimmer of hope that our relationship could be repaired, even if it would take time. In the meantime, Lacey's health improved, and we focused on preparing for the arrival of our baby. The experience had brought us closer together, but it had also shown us the importance of setting boundaries and prioritizing our family's well-being. Am I the idiot?